What's good, everybody? Back once again, and more Hornets talk from I. Uh, it's more so that I was sort of something I've been thinking about, but also came across today, and then I was like, so I was like read, and then like I seen like people comment stuff like that. Then I like, I can't forget the guy. He was on like a Bleach Report talking about doing some Hornets talk or whatever. But it's just some of the thoughts that I've like had within general about the Hornets. That I was like I've also seen other people discuss. So I mean, I guess like it was like something I had on my mind, but then I started seeing other people talk about it too. So, but anyway, one of the things is Chris Paul to the Hornets. Now, everybody could be like, "Oh, that's ridiculous," and all this other stuff, and everybody just like, "Oh, I don't want to do that money," and he's old and brittle, and there's gonna be all that type of stuff. And in my head, I'm like, I don't see this part where I was like, it's the fans, and and it's not thinking about not just about like the fandom of it, but also from like the general manager. Like sometimes I'm like, that's how, like a lot of times I'm like, we got to think about stuff as like the owner or like the general manager more than like what you want or what you think of as a fan. So like the Chris Paul trade, I've seen like everybody like knocking it and stuff like that, and almost like the Russell Westbrook trade from a while back. But to me it's different because I'm like, if you keep Russell Westbrook, I mean like like I was like he might be able to push us into like one of them ACs, or he would have came in handy I guess when LaMelo got hurt or something like that, blah blah blah. But he's a lot of money. But at the same time, the way I see it different, and it's like it's somewhat like Chris Paul, but a little different. Is that I'm like, yeah, but you get Westbrook. One, you can buy him out, and two, you can also like he only has a year left, so it's not really as heinous as it seems, And that's sort of like with Chris Paul. I'm like Chris Paul, except for the difference is like Westbrook was on an expiring deal, so if you wanted to get off some people, you could do that. Chris Paul's sort of the same thing. While he's not on an expiring deal, he's on a partial deal. So that means you could trade for him straight up for $30 million in cash, I believe, but you can cut him and only give him 15. To me, I'm like, that's really good if you're not going to keep him or whatever. Because I mean, like I was like, I do think they need a veteran on the team, but I don't think Chris Paul's the right veteran just because he's going to be wanting to do all at this stage. It ain't like he's like an older dude that needs like sort of like revamp his like career to show he can still play like how Westbrook did with the Clippers. It's not necessarily that. He's sort of at the stage and age where it's like he needs to be on like a team with vets and all this other stuff, chasing championship, that kind of thing. But I'm like, he's really good for it getting rid of all like the contracts where you just don't want to deal with anymore. Like so, for instance, I'm like he's making a good amount of money to where you could get rid of Rozier, Hayward, you could do any one of those sort of combinations of people. I was like, hell, you might be able to do. I was like, you might be able to really do both. And maybe Phoenix like throws in like if they got a pick or something like that in there. I'm trying to think of like who else there is like Shamit or I'm like you gotta have to throw somebody else in there or whatever. But to me, I'm like while Hayward is on his last year of his deal, Terry Rozier just gets signed an extension, so he's still got like 3 years and it's high up his number. And one, I'm like cool. So wouldn't you rather sort of get rid of Hayward now instead of wait a whole year when you already know he probably only gonna play like 30 games? So it was like, go ahead and get his money out the books already. That way we use it for something else. Maybe I was like, maybe there's a young player that we could pay to, something like that. Rozier is another guy that I think, while he's been needed, because like we don't really have anybody else that could really score, and then Bridges was gone, so therefore there's that whole thing. But he's not. I was like, where Rozier probably should be is on probably another team. Like if he's with Phoenix, different ball game. Even if he was like on, like if he could have been on the Heat, different ball game. I was like, his potential is better on a veteran team or a team that's in the playoffs than it is on a team like the Hornets that's sort of just like trying to figure out who could play here. Because I'm like, he's still young, but he's not really young, and he's young and he's really good for what our team is. To where he need is like, he's really kind of he could be a starting two guard or whatever, but or even a point guard, and depending on what kind of team you got. But I feel like he's really like a dude that like he's a six man in a lot of instances. But I was like, with us, he kind of has to be, the main scorer, and I feel like that's not really the role that he really fits. So I'm like, so it's like cool, you could get off of him and Hayward, because that's really the only people that we gotta really paying any money to. But just go ahead and just get rid of him. I was like, get Chris Paul in, pay him $15 million, he's gone. I was like, now you just freed up salary cap space. We're probably gonna bring back PJ Washington. And then there's nobody else really. I mean, LaMelo next year, so you ain't got to worry about him right now. But then that's it. To me, that's what the Chris Paul trade is for. Not like him being an actual contributor to the team, or him being like a vet guy. No, not really any of that. And I'm like, if that's what he uses for, then I'm like, that's a smart and good way to look at it. Only if it's for that. But I can't really imagine. I don't know if the Suns would take it. I think they should sort of take it, because I don't think nobody else will be. I don't think there's that many teams that are willing to trade for Chris Paul to get rid of salary cap per se. Really amongst these teams, but I'm like, you get you could start Rozier with Booker, or you can have Booker come off the bench. Either way is fine. Gordon Hayward, I was like, even like on a team like Phoenix, that you don't have to count on him. The Hornets has always had to really count on him, especially that type of money he's making. You're sort of needing him to play. But with the Suns, you can space him out a lot more, where it's like you could play him a little bit. And I get it, like you basically traded Chris Paul injury prone with Gordon Hayward injury prone. And now the crazy thing is that I was like, but this is how I think Hayward actually will be. It was sort of like I was reading where I'm like, yeah, like everybody remember Batum, gave him a lot of money, didn't live up to it, whatever. Also wasn't. I was like, he had a little bit of injuries too as well too. So it wasn't just smooth sailing other than his poor performance of play. But with the Clippers, I was like pretty much playing all the games. I was like hitting big shots, playing really defensive, and it's just like really because it's like he was the main guy for the Hornet that he had to really be. Especially with the money you giving him, and then when he's not, you see what he actually probably is, better value. I was like, he probably would have been a better player if we didn't have that type of money. Same thing with like Westbrook on the Lakers, like how he was with the Clippers, awesome, but you're also not giving that same amount of money. Hayward, I feel like once he goes to the Suns and he's not getting, and I was like, now he could be looked at as different. Now he could looked at as a complimentary player. I was like, Hayward's okay today, and we're sitting Durant. Cool. We can have. I was like, bam. I was like, another dude off the bench where he could control it, do all that stuff that he does with the Hornets, where he's sort of like a little bit of a playmaker, somewhat of a shooter. He can still get his own shot and stuff. It's not as great as when he was like with Utah or like, I was like, he didn't really get to really play with the Celtics like that, but it's still there. He just can't do it like he used to. But when he's like the third or fourth option, I was like on that Phoenix team until we see how all that get put together. Basically, they keep aiding and stuff. But I think it will be a win for the Hornets if you think about it that way. Because I like my fear with the Hornets is always that time. I was like, when we used to have Kemba, Jefferson, Zeller getting his money, Marvin Williams getting his money. Dang it, I can't remember. But it was I was like, I think Lamb had his money. I was like, MKG had his. We tied up money in a lot of middling players. It's like if the Heat decided to start paying Vincent Strus. Duncan's already getting his crazy amount of money. Caleb Martin, if they were paying them dudes like 15 mil a year, 15, which I mean that's what they say they might get, but they paying like them like 15, 20 mil, you can't do nothing anymore. But I'm like, unlike the Heat, I'm like the Hornets is not a team that can afford to do that. And you've seen how like it was a middling team, a middling road team, but there was nothing you could do because all like you had like 6, 7 players making high money, way more than what their worth is, and you can't even trade them. And that's sort of what I'm. That's sort of why I'm like, like PJ, as long as it don't get crazy high, like if it's want like 20 mil, no. Even I was like, I guess you could do 15 mil to be his first contract, but I'm like, I just don't want you just don't want to get tied down with that amount of money for somebody that is just really a role player starter, and that's sort of what the Hornets sort of have outside of LaMelo, and I'm like Bridges and Washington is sort of like the ones that's on like the teeter totter. We got Oubre as well, but I think it's just to clear that money, and nobody else is gonna take Hayward. Somebody will take Rozier. Nobody's gonna take Hayward. Hayward would have to have like our second first round pick attached, I think, in order to really move him, even though he's an aspiring contract. And I was like, So I think the Chris Paul trade would be fine if it's used in that way, despite what other people might think. But anyway, that was just my little thoughts on it. If you like this, I appreciate it. If not, hey, maybe next time. But until then, peace. I'm out.